Welcome to the Shutter Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Blue. Join me each week as we dive into amazing conversations with some of our industry's top leaders. We will talk about photography, business, and most of all, share the stories that have laid the foundation to our journey in this world we call photography. A couple of ways to support the show is to like, subscribe, and share the show with others. Leave those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and if you're a fan of seeing us live, we are on YouTube. Also, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Again, thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome all to another wonderful episode of the Shutter Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Marvin Blue. With me, my guest this week is none other than the incomparable Shawn Black. He's coming to us from Boston, Massachusetts. You know, if you don't know who Shawn Black is, you need to do some Googling. And if you love boudoir photography, let's just say I got one of the best in the business doing it. He's the president of the Association of International Boudoir Photographers. He's been a mentor of mine for years, and he just brings a wealth of knowledge, and he has had quite the journey, to say the least, in the photography industry. So Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I know you'd messaged me a while back and schedules didn't make sense then, but it's time for Black and Blue.
Yes, the Black and Blue connection is going to start today. I think we're remiss. The fans of ours are going to be upset when they don't see coffee in front of us because, you know, let's talk about the coffee buff that is you. Okay, well, I stand corrected. Then we do have our cheers, mate. All right, so let's rewind. I don't even want to jump to photography first. Let's talk about your love of coffee and how hilarious it is. Because I mean, you are known for these coffee selfies on the plane, in the terminals. What's up with the coffee, man?
So the whole thing was, one, I love coffee to begin with. And It started out where I took a selfie of myself on a plane. I can't remember how long ago, when I was heading to, I think it was imaging or WPPI, and like got tons and tons of interaction on it. And so I did the same thing on the return flight. And then it started to become this thing that became attached to my personal brand. And so every time I travel now, I take that obligatory Shawn on plane with coffee and have built this whole secondary brand identity that draws people to me, that has absolutely nothing to do with photography and is so important to building a brand identity as a photographer within the industry that is looking to be an educator or whatnot. You need to stand out in some way. And for me, it was one of my other passions being coffee. It just seemed natural. And then it evolved into my failed foam art postings. And it's hilarious to see what it's all turned into. I have people sending me coffee, or like there was I think it actually might have been Shutterfest. I got on the plane and it was super early. So I didn't get Starbucks wasn't even open. So I got on the plane and I didn't have a Starbucks, and people were like actually messaging me and like, "Are you okay?" And so I got there and I posted a picture with Starbucks at St. Louis Airport. I'm like, "Nope, I haven't been kidnapped. I'm fine. Here's my coffee." But yeah, it's evolved into this whole life of its own where I have to continue up with the selfies with coffee. And if I don't do a failed foam art every couple of days, I start getting messages where like, "Where are they? We need new foam art."
Nice. I get a kick out of it every time, and then it's like, oh yeah, you're my reminder that I haven't drank my 3 cups of coffee today. So, yep, definitely. I'm with you though. I love coffee. It is my lifeblood. You know, I can't get around it. But so I gotta ask, have you done the coffee boudoir session or the coffee inspired? Have you successfully pulled one of those off yet?
I haven't done something specifically around it because I want it to be epic, and I haven't quite worked it out in my mind, not to mention the fact of some of the ideas that I've had would require a ton of coffee beans. And I don't know if I could sit there and use them and then have to throw them away and not drink them. So it's a tough thing. Like, okay, I'm going to get pounds and pounds of beans, but I'm not going to make coffee out of them. I don't know if I could handle that.
Well, that's why you got to buy the cheap. You got to buy the cheap beans for those moments. I have done the coffee inspired boudoir session. Is one, I can never show it publicly for 2 reasons. One, there was a lot of nudity in it, and 2, it was at a Starbucks. We literally went there after hours. The client was a manager there, and she just said she was, you know, a bride and she was getting married. She was working there as a manager, and she goes, "I really want to do a boudoir session." I said, okay, cool. And I start giving her ideas, and she's like, oh, but we met at Starbucks, and she's like, I would like to incorporate coffee. And I was like, I jokingly said, well, let's shut down the Starbucks and let's just do it there. And I said it as a joke, and she was like, you're not going to do that if you want to. And I was like, the cameras are going to be, she's like, no, all the cameras will be off. And I'm like, if you're down, I will definitely do it. So we drop shades. I was like, this is going to get us arrested or get you fired or whatever. And she's like, you're not going to show it publicly, so I'm not worried about it. So I was like, hence, some of my best boudoir work is never to be seen by the public eye, and I'm okay with that.
All right. And that's the thing. I'm like, boudoir is not about us as the photographer.
True
boudoir
exactly.
is about the client. I'm like, we may be blessed to have a model release and show it. And for me, I'm very lucky. We have probably about 95% of our clientele signs model releases because they're proud of their imagery, but more so they want to use it to inspire other women to do this and have that feeling that they have. So it's really cool to have women when it is literally the last thing that we ask at their IPS session is they're almost walking out the door and like, would you consider signing a model release to help inspire other women? And like, before I even get to that, a lot of them are like, oh, so are you going to use my images? And I'm like, okay, let's get through picking your images first. This is about you, not about me. And we'll get to that at the end. But yeah, it's incredible when you have clients that are so in tune with your brand and want to really help you grow, not to mention change what that beauty narrative is in more than just their own circle, because it's pretty effed up as to what our culture, our society, and our media just drops on, especially women. As you're not beautiful unless you're this, you're not sexy unless you're that. If you're at this age, you can't do this. And it's all bullshit. So having women be able to start and push this message out, it makes it a better place for their circle and for all of the women that are sort of interacting with our brand. And I look at it as every single woman that I photograph and help feel and see themselves that way, that ripple effect is going to hit my circle, my wife, my daughter, and make it a more positive message that's coming into them as far as what beauty is in this world. And it's not what the media, our culture, and our society is pushing out there. We're really backwards, especially when you compare to like Europe, where they understand nudity and the human body and form and don't decry it. We decry it, but at the same time, we sell with it. It's like, okay, yep, we got to sell Corvettes, put a half-naked woman on the hood in a bikini. But dear Lord, oh, there's a woman breastfeeding in public or something like that. So we are very twisted in our views as to the human body, especially the female form.
Oh no, I totally agree with you on that. Like I've always felt like beauty in the U.S. Is a very hypocritical idea, if that makes sense. And I mean, this is coming from a guy that's lived overseas, been in the military, traveled the world, and I've gotten outside of the U.S. bubble. So where I can go to one place and you see women fully covered up, but they're viewed as goddesses in their beauties, and all you're seeing is their eyes. And then I go to places where women walk around half naked, and they're shamed for it, or they're we're judging how they look, or whatever. And or we could see someone fully covered up and see her as the most gorgeous woman in the world, and then see someone who's wearing next to nothing, and we're just like, and we look past her. It's almost like we become immune to seeing true beauty in the U.S. in a way. And I feel like thankfully I'm in a job that allows me to see beauty in a different set of eyes and a different mentality, if that makes sense.
No, completely. And like I said, it is just, and again, it varies where you go within the country too.
Absolutely.
As far as living in Boston, founded by Puritans, and still a lot of that mentality up here, boudoir is still not frowned upon, but it is not readily looked upon like in places like Miami or Vegas or LA, where they're more open and out as far as sexuality and things like that. But also they live in an area where they're more body conscious because, again, they wear less clothing for most of the year versus New England, where like it doesn't get warm until June. And that in of itself can just make a difference as far as the way things are perceived. And then you hit the Bible Belt, and it's a whole nother story there. So it's really interesting to see the different mixed messages that the human body, the female form, boudoir, all of these things have throughout our own country, and the different differentiating factors, whether it be religion, whether it be demographics of the area. It makes it a challenge for all of us. And there's not one single area where it's like, okay, yep, this is where it's accepted. Whereas you go, like I said, overseas and you hit into Europe, and the whole idea of art is viewed differently. And so it's a constant battle. And then again, you take the idea of social media into it and all of their biases. And now you start adding the whole thing with AI in, as to the way that they're scanning and viewing images and taking the human element out. It's a really slippery slope that we're standing on right now with everything that's going on.
Absolutely. And so I got a list of questions I want to start with. Obviously, like the origins, the beginning of when you first started. But I really want to jump into this one just because it's very prevalent to what we do. But being a male, well, first off, first question is, what got you into boudoir photography? And then being a male and navigating through the boudoir landscape as a male, how have you been able to do it at such a high level and avoid the pitfalls that is associated with being a boudoir photographer, especially a male boudoir photographer?
So I had an easier route than most because I didn't come into boudoir from ground zero. I had already an established award-winning wedding business. And so my first boudoir clients, and the way that I got into it was I had brides asking. And so I started shooting boudoir for them, and it was a totally different philosophy that I had then, because it was about creating pretty pictures. It wasn't about an experience for her or empowerment. It was about a gift and just creating pretty pictures. And that's how I got started into it. And then probably a few months in, I got my first non-bridal clients. And that's when everything flipped, where they were coming in and it was a session for them. And that also coincided with my daughter being born and being married for basically 2 years at this point. So my whole just vision as to what women's struggles are evolved at that point. And it really created that be bold, be sexy, be you tagline that became our brand philosophy, that we want you to step out of your comfort zone and be bold. We want you to still look and feel like you. And we want that sexiness to shine. And out of all three of those, the BU is the most important part, because we want you to remember the hair, the makeup, the lingerie, all that stuff. Yeah, you're not going to have that every day, but that's not what makes these images special. It's that inside that we drew out of you or sparked back again, whatever it may be, that shines through, that you see as the client, that makes it special. So that's sort of how I got into it. And I didn't have the initial pitfalls of creating a reputation as a male photographer in this intimate portraiture, where I already had an established reputation as a top level photographer in Boston. I already had clientele that I was drawing on that knew me from this. So it wasn't this sort of cold call into the world of boudoir. I had this soft landing and ramped up clientele through a network that already knew me as trustworthy and reputable. And I just continued to grow off of that. The other thing that was huge is being very visible. I live my life very publicly on social media, and having that window into who I am as a photographer, as a husband, as a dad, all of these things, people get to see into my life. So when they finally meet us, because my wife, Michelle, is now the studio manager and has been for the past 4 years plus. And they're like, I feel like I already know you guys. So that's something that has always been a huge part of what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned Michelle, so I don't get to ask this a lot just because I don't do it personally. But the working with your wife, how beneficial has that been to have something like this and then be able to share it with your wife in regards to business?
So overall, it is absolutely amazing. And the funny thing is, like, we work together, but we don't work together. The
Okay.
only time that we're actually really together is during a session when she's my studio assistant. It's also the only time that I'm the boss. So that is hilarious. But she handles back end stuff, booking, all of that. I'm the creative. We always say I make it pretty, she makes it work. She came into the brand as full time the beginning of the pandemic. So she left her corporate world, came in, and it allowed us to, one, be present for our kids. Two, the fact that we are not both photographers, so we're not butting heads on that aspect of things. So it's a good working environment in that aspect. If we were both creatives and both doing the same thing, yeah, it might be a little bit more difficult, but where she handles her side of things, I handle my side of things, it works really, really well. And we balance each other out because I have the pie in the sky ideas. She brings me back down to earth and we finish somewhere in the middle. But yeah, she's definitely been amazing for the brand overall, because adding a female voice, I'd never struggled with booking throughout the years before her, but when she became a part of that and just expanded a female voice into the brand, we went from like this to off the charts as far as the way that things went. And we've been able to add so much more with that female voice that I just couldn't as a male. So there are some of the restrictions that staying away from certain topics as a male in this industry, you have to. Otherwise, you come across as the sort of sketchy creeper guy. But those are things that she can address, and it still allows us into that demographic, or allows us to answer questions that are more comfortable coming from a female. So it's been absolutely amazing. And then, like I said, from the personal level, it allows us to be more present for our kids, for us, and just have a life where she's not going off to a 9-to-5 corporate job and then I'm going off this way. It just allows us to have a flexible schedule and do a lot more overall.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is you have a wife that gets it. So she because she's now a part of it and sharing it with you, she gets it. She gets the ups and downs, the creative struggles, the challenges that we put, the amount of pressure that I know you put on yourself. I mean, my wife has a very clear understanding, just being able to see me from the ground up doing that. Like, she stayed away from the business side, but her role has always just been the support role to call me on my shit, not be afraid to pull any punches and tell me, you need to get better, or you need to push yourself, or you're getting complacent. So I have it on that end, but to actually like work with me, she never had any interest in picking up the camera. So I'm always in some parts of me can be envious of the married couples that get to work together, because I do wish there are times I could share that with my wife, but I know if it's not hers, if it's not her bag, then
Yeah.
she won't.
Don't force it.
Exactly. And I would say, if you don't love doing something, you're not gonna give it your 100%. And obviously I love being behind the camera, so I'm always pushed creatively, and which goes into my next question. So creatively, what's kept you at the kind of, I guess, at the top of everything in Boudoir? Because I mean, it is such a challenge. Every time you get another person in front of you, you have these list of challenges to try not to be mundane, but be creative and capture their best version of themselves in the most vulnerable state. So what's pushed you to be at the top, at the top of your game in those aspects?
One, I'm very competitive. I
Okay.
don't like being second best. I was an athlete from the time I could walk, through playing Division I sports. So there's always that competitive edge to me of wanting to push myself. But aside from that, the big thing for me is, and I tell this to my clients, what we do, isn't life or death like a doctor. I'm like, yes, you come to me. I'm not allowed to have a bad day, because for all of the things that I can show you that are amazing, I could have you crying in the corner, sucking your thumb, if I just mailed it in and like, whatever, I'm not feeling it today. I don't ever want a client to feel like that. I've had an experience personally. My actual wedding photography she mailed it in, and
Oh my
we don't
gosh.
have a wedding album.
Oh,
We don't have wedding photos that we love, and I remember that feeling, and that's a totally different feeling than the intimate nature of Boudoir. So extrapolating that and adding it to Boudoir, I'm like, yeah, I don't care how I feel. I can give 90 minutes. The moment that client walks out the door, I might be a puddle in the foyer of the studio and just like dying, but they're going to get my A game every time because I know the damage that we can do with a lens. And it's something that so many who pick it up and do this transactionally drive me crazy, where they don't appreciate the trust that your client is putting into you. They don't appreciate the change that they can make in these clients, whether it be male or female, because I've had males when I first started shooting them after several years of shooting women exclusively. And I thought, oh yeah, it's going to be a completely different reaction at the reveal. No, it's the same thing where men are like, oh my God, that's me. And have a different perspective and a different confidence when they leave. So every client that steps in front of my lens, I've always had that respect for them to give them everything that I can. The way that I've always sort of pushed myself to be there creatively and not just be a Xerox machine is education, surrounding myself with creatives, trying to do as many creative projects as I can, and just really diving into what my craft is and realizing that ultimately you need to fail to succeed. And I'm willing to sit there, follow my face over and over again. And I tell anyone of my students that I educate, whether it be at conferences, workshops, or whatever, I don't want you guys to succeed. I want you to fail epically. Because if you succeed out of the gate, you didn't learn anything. It's by that falling down and getting back up that you're going to learn something, and that repetition that's going to ingrain it into you. Because if you do it right out of the gate and you're successful, you're not going to remember necessarily how to replicate that. You got lucky. And understanding the process is incredibly important, because every person who steps in front of your lens isn't the same person. They're not the same body. They're not the same hang-ups about their body. So understanding the process is how you can then adapt that process to their specific, unique being and create images for them that are unique to them. Whereas, yeah, you have that success, and then you go to try and go to client B, and they're a completely different body type. Okay, how do you adapt that now? You don't know the process. You just knew how to get from point A to point B, jumping over, not actually knowing it. So and we talked about this a little bit before we jumped on, is just that getting to conferences and being surrounded by creatives is huge. It recharges me so much. And right now we're in the middle of the summer doldrums where there aren't conferences really going on. I'm feeling that a little bit. And it's when I got to get on Zooms, do things like this, that I'll feel that energy come back, or someone will do something and I'll see their work and they'll challenge me. And I'm like, okay, you did that. I got to do it better and put my spin on it. So it's little things that in games that I play with myself, we all go through those doldrums where our work to us seems like it's a Xerox machine occasionally, or you're doing the same poses or what have you. And that's when you got to dig deep and not just fall into that rut of doing the same thing over and over again, because you will burn out. You will not attract new clients, because eventually your clients will start to see that Xerox effect. And so you want to avoid that as much as you can, but for your own creative soul, and to be able to do this long term and stay at the top and keep evolving and moving up. There's no such thing as the top. It's just where's the next rung in the ladder to keep moving up. If you ever think you're at the top, no matter what you're talking about, education, being behind the lens, post-production, whatever it is, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Like, I'm constantly sitting in on classes or trying to absorb more, stealing little hacks that I can when I get to watch people shoot, and then putting my own spin on it. And I'm sure you do the same thing.
Oh yeah. When it comes to growth, I always say if I'm the best photographer in the room, I'm going to another room.
And
Because
that's the thing is,
I never want to be the best, and because I know my mortality. I know I'm human, and I know that I'm not perfect, and I know that there is so much talent out there. And the second I'm like, okay, if I'm the best photographer in this room, I better be helping everybody get better. And then then I'm also looking for that next room to be challenged at and grow. I don't want to be the big fish in a small pond. And I mean, we talk about that with the education side. Who's been the people that kind of lit a fire in you, or pushed you, or challenged you? Who are the creative geniuses that you follow, or who's the people that just, let's say, scare the shit out of you when you see their work? You're just like, fuck this guy or this girl, excuse me.
All right. So the probably my longest inspiration and influence on my work, dating back before anything, and as a photographer, is Herb Ritz.
Okay.
He is a freaking legend. I could sit there and stare at one of his pieces for hours and dissect it and just be wowed. He's one of those ones. The very first time I ever saw his work, it floored me, and it's one of those things that I can't imagine what he'd be doing today if he was still alive, and how he would have evolved his art. So he's always had a extreme effect on me, especially the fact that some people know I'm actually colorblind. So his black and white work speaks to me volumes. I see color, I just see it very differently, and I have a very rare type of color blindness where it's got to do with my optic nerve, not the actual rods and cones. So my brain interprets color differently. So his black and white stuff was always a big thing, and it's why I trend to very bold, contrasty type work. But moving into Boudoir, when I first got into it back in 2013, I joined at the time, one of the only real resources for Boudoir was AIBP, the association that I now own. And I met virtually at the time Kate Scaglione, who is my ride or die in the photo industry. She is like, we're brother and sister. I can bounce anything off of her. She was actually the very first person who shot me back in 2015 out in LA when we were at a retreat. Other photographers and I'm like, she shoots a completely different style than me.
Oh yeah, no, Kate's a badass. She's a badass.
She's the one who I can show an image to, and she will flat out tell me, it's like, yeah, you suck on this, if I need to be told that, or what have you. So I'm like, I know I'm going to get truth from her. The things that pushed me and really developed me in my love of how I go about photography and sort of my editorial style were Craig Lemaire and Nino Batista.
Okay.
I met them, like I said, I met them virtually through AIBP back 2013, 2014. And then I met them in person at the very first AIBP retreat out in LA in 2015. And one of my most influential moments ever in my entire photography career was the first night at the retreat. Everyone's gone to bed. And it was pretty much, we were staying at this estate. So it was all different mansion buildings that we were all in, and we had different rooms. And I made sure that I was in the building that all the instructors were in. And so everyone's gone to bed. It's like 1:30 in the morning. And Craig is down in the lobby of this mansion shooting one of the models. And I just sat in the corner and I watched. And I sat there for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just watched him light, watched him tweak, watched the model move. And I absorbed so much from that, and sparked me of like, okay, he was one of the people that I'm like, all right, I love his lighting. I love his style. I love the detail and look of his work. I'm like, I need to push past him. And like, that was the finish line to push past and constantly run towards. And then Nino's class and his whole aspect of retouching and lighting and developing them. I'm like, and they both don't shoot traditional boudoir, but their lighting aspect just was that totally geeked out with me and sent me down that whole lighting journey, to really understand light more than just, point light at girl, expose image, how to craft light, how to shape light. And I remember probably 2016, 2017, I was at WPPI and I did a shoot at the Neon Boneyard, and Craig's known for shooting low angle, on his models and shooting up and all that. And I did this shot and I tagged him, in it. I'm like, yep, ode to Craig Lemaire, because I was laying on the ground and I had a 16 millimeter lens right at her toes. So he's got this big distortion up, looks statuesque and all of that. And just his comment back was just like, damn. And little things like that as I grew, and then eventually became contemporaries with them, where I'm posting stuff and they're commenting back. And that's really cool. And the other thing, and it's not even a photographer of any note, I couldn't even tell you who it is, and it's happened multiple times where I've been stopped at conferences or whatnot, and it is, my wife will tell you, my downfall, where I will sit there and I will talk forever if you pull me aside, which is why she needs to be my handler at conferences. She's like, she's the bad guy and pulls me away. It's like, yeah, he needs to go teach a class. But I've had people come up to me and they say, your work or this inspires me. That is the most humbling thing you will ever hear, and something that you need to respect and live up to. And that's what pushes me more than any other sort of like idol photographer or anything like that, is that idea that you're an inspiration to someone.
Yep.
And it floored me the first time it ever happened. And it's something that's always stayed with me. And anytime that someone says it to me, it's just, it reinforces that, yep, no, if I'm having a bad day, doesn't matter. That is something that will always stay with me, and I will always appreciate and cherish that I'm an inspiration to someone. And if someone says that to you, take that to heart, hold that, cherish that. Don't ever let that go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny is because I'm pretty sure that was one of my first approaches to you, was to tell you that, that your work inspires me. It lets me know it's okay to be a guy doing boudoir, and that I've always kind of made you kind of my measuring stick in the boudoir aspect of my career, because like you are married and you have daughters, and which is very parallel to my life. I'm married and I have daughters, and how do you navigate that? I think we've had that conversation about navigating that, and it's funny that what you did with Craig was sitting in the corner watching him shoot for an hour, because I'm almost certain that's exactly what I did in St. Louis when I got to like be face to face with you for the first time. Was I just sat back and watched you do your thing, and during after hours, and you were just killing it, and just the concept of how you did it, and you were in one space, you weren't taking her all over the place, you stayed in one place and just did everything in that one little area. And but it looks like you were in so many different places, just the way you're using angles and lighting and everything in between. And it's funny you talk about Craig, because he's the one that taught me, one, if you're ever going to shoot him, don't wear a white t-shirt. And and we also, the saying goes, if your shirt isn't dirty, then you didn't go to work. And because he's always laying on the ground. So
oh god, yeah,
I've learned to wear dark colors if he's around, because I know I'm going to end up getting on the ground. And even now, like when I'm at weddings, I'm like, you know what, shirt's about to get dirty, which is why I don't wear Gucci.
I always say, I'm like, it's not a photo shoot unless I'm laying on the ground.
Exactly.
I love shooting low angle. It's even in my wedding work, I was always filthy by the time I went home, and it was dusty. It's usually like, okay, let me get off the dress clothes and put on a t-shirt to get in the car before I bring all this muck into the car with me. And it's one of those things. So many people are like, oh, why? I'm like, don't shoot like a tourist.
Yep.
Like tourists shoot here.
Straight on. Yep. Absolutely.
Get down here. Get up here. Get over here. Whatever it is, don't shoot like a tourist. We're professionals. Find the angle. Find the light. It's an amazing thing, but it's one of those things that because of the digital age, so many people think that they're professionals because they picked up the same camera that you do, or even a better one. And I used to see that more so when I was in the wedding world. It was like, yeah, Uncle Bob over there has got a Canon 1DX and I'm shooting on a 5D. And I'm like, okay, I can take my iPhone out and shoot better than you. It's an interesting thing with the digital revolution. And yeah, revolution is long since gone, but we're still evolving in it. But the lasting effect was so many people became photographers, and that not understanding light, not understanding the rules. And it's not to say that it's like, oh, you need to stay with the rules.
Editing. And we're back. Looks like we had technical difficulties, but Shawn was talking about being naked and taking pictures. So let's go continue. No, I think, but going back to my origins with you is like, I just remember, like, I loved your work. I love that you don't do the atypical thing, because it's like when you think of like the males in our industry that that come to mind, it was you, Sasser, and there's a few other come to mind, but like the first that come to mind was you and Sasser, and you particularly because your last name is Black and my last name being Blue, it was like easy to remember. And it was, to me, I feel like I always remember the two of you because your styles are very different, But then also what drew me more to you is I always say Sasser uses a lot of models, you use a lot of real people. And I always say that was the big difference. And that's not a shot against Sasser by no means,
No, I'm friends with Mike, and it's one of those things that, one, he also lives out in LA.
And everyone looks like a model in LA too, so I have to correct myself.
Everyone looks like a model in LA. So
that's why I say that treading lightly when I say that, because I don't want people thinking like, oh, he only gets models, because no, those are real clients, and he is in LA, and everyone looks like a model there.
And he also shoots a different demographic for his clientele than I do. My wheelhouse that we want in our studio is pretty much 35 to 65 is the key demographic for us. Whereas he shoots a slightly younger demographic because, again, he's in LA. They have a slightly younger demographic as far as their overall, but it's what he attracts to his studio and his style. So it's a little bit different, and it's funny like to hear those things because we have angel wings and all that stuff. We have all the accessories and everything in our studio, and part of the reason being is the demographic that we shoot is women who grew up with the Victoria's Secret Angels. We went to a wedding show, and the very first time that we brought the wings, we did a social media giveaway. It's like all you had to do was selfie with the wings and post it and tag us. We got one entry, and it told us a lot because the demographic from the wedding show was in the 20s, and we're like, okay, wait a second. They don't know the Victoria's Secret Angels and the runway shows and the big dramatic performances and all that. So it didn't resonate with them, but it resonates with our key demographic. So it's why we've kept it and have all those things. And that's what's important about this business is you need to know who you're targeting, because my message, yes, I still shoot from 21 to whatever age, but our key marketing message is more towards that 35 plus. It's not targeting the Victoria's Secret pink era. So it's really important to understand who you're marketing to in order to be successful in this. You can't have the shotgun approach where it's like, yep, I make pretty pictures, because you're not going to be successful long term. You may book a bunch of sessions, but you're not going to get that repeat business because they don't identify with your brand.
Absolutely. Nice. I lost my train. That whole technical difficulty threw me off, man. No. Hold on, let me take a sip of my drink. Okay, so jumping into it. So AIBP, something that I have danced around being a part of and everything. And it's, just because, when you're not a full-time boudoir photographer, and the way I view boudoir photography is like, if I did more sessions of boudoir photography than I did seniors, then I would consider myself kind of at a high, but to me, it's been, most of it comes from a bride wanting to do the risky book. Most of it comes from, models or people that are trying to build their content. They know I have the skill set to bring it to life or whatever. And that's kind of been always what's kept me in there and everything. But with AIBP, like tell me about its growth, because I know you started as a member, now you're the president, the owner. You guys got an amazing conference coming up in November of this year, which, if everything goes right, I hope to be there, just depending on schedule as always. But I'd love to, let's dive into that, give a little bit more about the insight of what it gives to the industry.
All right. So AIBP was actually established back in 2009. The previous ownership, the original founders, saw a niche and started to fill it. And it was amazing. And it was the only sort of boudoir resource back when I got into the game in 2012, 2013 timeframe. And it was amazing both for community, for the little bit of sort of education as boudoir was becoming more popular and growing in the States at this point. And I know that if I hadn't found it, I wouldn't be where I'm at today as an artist, as a business person, and just within the community as a whole, because I met so many people that are now friends, both virtually and in real life, that have pushed me, that have inspired me, that have provided me with education. And so it was one of those things that I'd been a member and it was growing. And then in 2015, they started doing these educational retreats yearly. And then as we got to sort of 2018, 2019, ownership was hitting that sort of wall where they weren't giving back into the association as much as they should be. And it was starting sort of a downslide. And I started talking about the idea of like, oh, I'd love to take it over and little things like that. And one of the first things that was going to happen was we were going to take over the AIBP retreat and be solely responsible for that, even though we didn't own the association. So for 2020, we had started planning in January the retreat for that November. And then something happened in March of 2020. I don't remember what it was that shut the world down. And that totally put that on ice. But it also really put a hurt on the original owners' sort of interest because they just became disconnected. And I could see the association taking a nosedive. And so I started really negotiating and saying, okay, I want to take this over because this is such a vital part of my story as a photographer and a business person and an artist and an educator. I don't want to see it disappear. And if I didn't step in, it was going to be gone in 6 months. So we started negotiating. And then in August of 21, I was at WPPI in Vegas when they had pushed it to August that year, when I got the call from the bank saying the transaction had gone through. And we actually were the owners of AIBP at this point. And it was hilarious because I said, do you have any idea where I am? And they're like, no. I'm like, I'm standing on a balcony looking over the Vegas Strip. I don't think there's a better place I could have gotten this news. And so we're through the roof, just over the moon excited. We go to directly from there to the AIBP Expo floor, and we'd put out the press release and people were starting to find out about it. And instantly they're like congratulating us. What can we do? So we've spent the first 2 years of AIBP ownership rebuilding the stuff that previous ownership had let go by the wayside, relationships, reputation, all of these things. And we've gotten to a point over the past year, because this August will be 3 years of ownership, that we're starting to go into a growth phase now, because I didn't want to start and say, hey, come join AIBP when there was nothing there. There was very little to give back. So we wanted to get all those things back. We wanted to get tangible benefits back in. We wanted to get education ramped back up. We wanted to get the retreat back. And this November will be our 3rd year putting the retreat on. And we've gone bigger and bigger every year. And this year we have Lindsay Adler as our headliner for the retreat, with Andre Brown, Karen Bagley, Kate Scaglione, Rachel Brenke, and did I forget one?
Basically, you got a lineup of killers, is what you got.
Yeah, and it's absolutely amazing. It's a 4-day event where we limit it to about 40 people total, so that you get hands-on, really in-depth work with the instructors, and they're there to be able to like actually interact with you. They're not up on a stage. You're in. We've hosted it all 3 years now. It'll be in my studio, so you're in a live working studio where we have a 3,000 square foot space to be able to hold this, so that it's not you're in a hotel conference room and it's okay. Imagine that she's laying on a bed. No, she's laying on a bed.
Yep.
And we have all the equipment and everything. And so we believe in putting together really top-notch, value-driven education, because there is a lot of garbage education out there right now that people, one, they need to do their own homework and vet who they're going to invest their money in.
I agree.
But there's so much out there, again, and it comes to the fact that with digital, so many people picked up, and especially with the pandemic, picked up a camera and became a photographer for the first time and realized, oh, wait, boudoir is trendy and I can make a lot of money with boudoir. So a lot of people flock to boudoir. And then 6 months later, I'm an educator now. Like, I was in the industry for over 7 years before I did my first educational thing. I had been asked numerous times beforehand, and I'm like, no, I'm not ready. I'm like, I probably could have done it, but I didn't feel that I was at a point where I was going to deliver the value that I would expect. And there's so many people out there, and I'm not going to name names. It's for everyone to do their own due diligence. But it's one of the things that with AIBP, if it has our stamp on it, it's quality, because I've either attended it or vetted the educator. And that's one of the big things that we really want to have AIBP become, is that trusted source for education, for community, for whatever it is when it comes to boudoir. Like, when people think of PPA, they trust PPA and what PPA says. We want to be that for the boudoir community. And so this year, like I said, we've got several big projects. The first was, we are looking, and it's very close to fruition, to add health insurance as a benefit for our members.
Oh, wow.
We will be the first organization. PPA doesn't even offer this.
No, they don't.
To its members. So it is right now, the administrators that we're working with are out gathering quotes from the actual insurance company. We're hoping within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will have something that we can then start enrolling members into. And that's something that I've been trying to work on for ages, because I know as small business owners, it is a huge expense. And it's one of those things that for people looking to jump from their corporate world to photography full time, it's one of the things that holds them up, is they can't leave the insurance. So we're trying to move that needle forward and provide that for the boudoir community. It'll be interesting to see how many people all of a sudden identify as boudoir photographers in order to join and take advantage of this benefit.
I mean, if I get an insurance break, then, I'm a boudoir and wedding photographer, videographer, whatever it takes. No, I understand.
And that's the thing. It's something that we're trying to help the industry and create ways that we're not getting screwed over by corporate America just because we're solopreneurs. So it's funny, because a lot of people and their educational groups, it's about creating fame for that person. That's not what AIBP is. Yes, I may be the president and the face of it, but it's not about making Shawn Black more famous. It's about raising the bar for the boudoir industry. Like, so much of what I do is behind the scenes advocating for the industry, getting better education at these conferences. The fact that WPPI now has a boudoir track is a lot to do with the fact that for the past 3 years, I've been screaming behind the scenes, hey, we need better education, not just wedding photographers who shoot a handful of boudoir sessions. Let's get real full-time boudoir photographers teaching classes. And now there's a boudoir track. So things like that. The other two big things that we have going on, and this is about to drop on July 15th, is we are launching the AIBP Visionary Awards. It is going to be an image competition unlike any other. It is completely boudoir focused because the other major competitions, PPA, Portrait Masters, Icon, WPPI before that, they've never done boudoir correctly for several reasons. One, they lump it into another category of either fine art nude or fashion.
Yep. I was
So
going to say
it
fine
doesn't
art
get its
nude.
own. Yep.
Yep.
And it is usually dominated by non-commissioned work where a model's been hired, it's been shot specifically for competition. And one of the things that I've always prided myself on is, unless the competition is a live shoot thing, I've always submitted client work for competitions so that I could say I do award-winning work every day. And it's never been judged as high as it could be or as fairly as it could be because it's competing against perfect bodies or model bodies, for a better sort of term. So what we've done, and this is how we differ than any other competition, is we have 12 categories underneath in the boudoir niche, like male boudoir, female boudoir, underwater, pinup, all the different sub niches and subcategories. But we've then divided them to commissioned versus non-commissioned work. So if you submit client work, you're not being judged against models. So we've leveled the playing field, and it's going to have the people that love shooting models and submitting that type of stuff for competition, or it's going to have people that want to really have actual client work, because even though the boudoir industry is about empowerment, about all of these things, there's a subconscious bias in judging sometimes when it's you have the model body over here and you have the size 16 everyday woman over here. Even though technically they all may be the same, subconsciously people are drawn to the model body. And I've done A/B testing with this in my own private boudoir group when we've done things. I've done it in the ABP community, and it's a subconscious bias. So taking that away, we've now evened it out, and you can have that client that has an everyday client's body that you've lit beautifully and made and look and feel amazing, not being judged against, okay, yep, here's someone who's a size 0 and whatnot. And it's not that that's wrong versus this is right. It's just that's one of the problems with boudoir and competition. The other factor being is that competitions, and especially this is what really drove me this year, was PPA didn't display boudoir images on the monitors. And they said it was because, it was too risque and there were children there. I'm like, okay, first off, you're basically telling boudoir photographers that we are not artists worthy of being displayed, and it's not art. Whereas they had breastfeeding images and children were okay with that. It's up to the parents that decided to bring them, not PPA to say, yeah, we can't put this out there because you guys are risque or taboo. So it's one of those things where we wanted to really recognize boudoir and give everyone that level playing field. Because I also feel a lot of these other competitions, as soon as you take them out of the standard portrait orientation of sitting on a posing stool and lay them on a bed or something, they're like, oh, nope, score that lower because they're not in the correct positioning. So it's going to be a different scoring system from like your 12 merits of PPA and whatnot. But the other main factor is we have an amazing judging panel that is 8 judges, 6 of which are boudoir photographers, one of which is a former magazine editor, and one of which is a double grand WPPI award winner. So we have, and I'll give you the 2 big names that we have that are absolutely amazing. Lindsay Adler is one of our judges on the panel, and Gary Hill.
I think I've heard of her.
Yeah,
I think I've heard of Lindsay. Yeah,
one of the top photographers somewhere, I think the world. And then we have Gary Hill out of the UK, who has, I believe, won UK Photographer of the Year like 3 years in a row or something. So yeah, just small potatoes as our judging panel. And
I mean,
you'll
UK
have
is
to,
not the size of Texas or anything, so it's, I mean, it's just the UK.
yeah, well, and I'll have to let you wait for the rest of the panel when we drop next week. I think I'm going to drop another teasers to more details. But the other factor attached to this for boudoir photographers is we're doing an accreditation path as well. So you have the opportunity to earn degrees as you move up in it, and it'll be tied to not only competition, but attending workshops, attending conferences and things like that, so that we know people that are striving towards this are upping their level of education, competition, and all of those different aspects that make us better photographers, better business people as a whole. So those are the big initiatives that we have. And then we close out the year with the retreat, which is the second weekend of November. There are still tickets available for that, but we are already over 50% sold out. And then we get into Best of Boudoir for the year and our yearly awards for Photographer of the Year and whatnot. So all the big things really seem to be coming, because we sort of back weight the year, because conference season is the beginning of the year and I don't want to compete with any of that. So we sort of are just hitting the stride with what AIBP's big events and things are doing, starting off with the Visionary Awards in just over 2 weeks now. So we are looking forward to seeing this grow big and hopefully compete with and give boudoir photographers a competition they can be proud to enter and not worry about the fact of, all right, am I competing against fashion and fine art nude and I'm just jammed into this category with some of the other competitions out there. And we hope to be viewed with that same level of respect and whatnot, because one, the judging panel is on par with any of these other competitions. The sponsors that we're bringing on and supporting us in this are amazing. So we're hoping to have a really big first year so that we can grow it even bigger and better next year. The prize pool that we're assembling for our winners should be pretty amazing. And it's just something that it's like that little baby that's born. I can't wait to like send it out into the world and see it walk and take its first steps, because we've been working endlessly, probably since the beginning of the year on this. And it is at that point where launch date, like I said, is January 15th, when submissions are going to open for the Visionary Awards. And I can't wait.
I'm excited. I mean, I can tell you, like, just the interaction I had, like my first real experience with AIBP was last year at WPPI. You guys threw that party, and I went with I was with Pam and I think Megan, Pam, Megan, and then Ciara, who's a model I think
Yep.
we both know. She was there, and so I was just like, I'm gonna go hang out and everything. And right before the party, I saw a post that said, "Hey, post some of your boudoir work or whatever. We're gonna do a slideshow and we're gonna put the best work up there." And I just said, you know what? It says up to 3. I said, I'll give it a shot, see what happens. Worst they could tell me is no. That's always been my attitude. And I get there, or I come late because I was I think I was gambling probably.
You're fashionable.
And yeah, fashionably late, of course, And before I get there, phone's blowing up. Dude, you're on the wall. I said, what? You need to get, where you at? I'm like, I'm on my way to this party. And that's all I said was this party. Are you going to AIBP party? I said, yeah, that's where I'm headed to now. You're on their wall. I said, what are you talking about? They're like, you're on the slideshow. They got the, I'm like, wait, what? And I walk in there and it was like perfect timing. Like you couldn't script this any better. When I walked in and I said, what's up? I said, what wall are y'all talking about? They said right there. And right when they did it, boom, next picture is Ciara up there, and you can hear her yelling. And I was like, I know the guy that took that picture. And she just she runs and gives me this big hug. And she was like, dude, I didn't know you were submitting. I was like, I didn't know I was submitting. And I was like, this is cool. And then Pam was just like so super proud of me, because she's always been one of my like creative muses, and the work she's done with Boudoir is just, I mean, amazing. But it was like a kind of a proud moment, because I was amongst my peers that pushed me in the boudoir section of my career. And to see that, it was like, oh, this is cool, and then, I've always been out, floating around, but I mean, with everything that you're putting on the table, it tells me, you know what, become a member, enter, push myself. I love the accreditation that you're talking about. And, for me, I think that's just something special with my career because I want to have those stamps. I mean, even if for nothing else, just for my own journey as a photographer, you know?
We need to celebrate ourselves more often than we do.
Mm-hmm.
We as artists are constantly nitpicking our own work, and we don't celebrate or take time to appreciate what it is that we do and the importance of what we do. I was at the beginning of May, I was teaching in Michigan at the GLIP conference, and one of my attendees dropped something so profound on the class, and it's something that I've pretty much, anytime I've had to talk about it, it dropped it out, and it's said, just think about this: everyone in this room at some point will be nothing but a photograph.
Mm.
I'm like, that just, it floored me, and it really starts to put in perspective what it is that we do and how important what we do is. Like, I've had clients come in that they said their inspiration for doing their shoot was they came across their mom's album from when she did a shoot way back in the day or something, when she was her age, and she's like, I want that so that someday my daughter will see this and realize, oh wow, mom was amazing and mom was powerful and did this and that. And I'm like, that's the power of photography. And
Yep.
we all have this superpower of freezing time and creating images, especially portrait artists, that we can show people that spark, that fire inside themselves, that thing that drives them and really makes them feel amazing. And it's something that we need to acknowledge more in our own lives. And people say like, oh, why do you enter competitions or like this or that? I'm like, because let's face it, trophies are nice. Being patted on the back is nice. Getting accolades are nice. Do they mean that you're the best at anything necessarily? No. But it's nice to be acknowledged for what it is that you do. And there's times like I got invited back to the Pro Prince Legends competition this year for the second year after getting honorable mention last year. I only made top 100 this year. I still celebrated the hell out of that because, again, it's recognition of what I do. It's recognition of the art that I created, and it's recognition by your peers. I'm like, that
Absolutely. You know,
is a wonderful thing when you've got peers that, like I said, it all comes back to you inspire me. And having that being the ultimate recognition, meaning more than any trophy ever could. But it's nice to win awards. It's nice to get that industry recognition. And depending upon the career path that you want to take, whether you want to be an educator or you want to be an influencer within this industry, those recognitions are necessary. And you need to have a presence. You need to have a brand, personal and professional. It's one of those things that, yeah, why I do the coffee shit that I do, because it gives a conversation starter for people to like, oh, I saw your coffee stuff. And I've had people that saw my coffee stuff and didn't realize that I was a boudoir photographer, and then ended up booking me because of that doorway that they came in originally. And you never know where people are going to come from and what's going to resonate with them. And that's why being authentic, celebrating yourself, and not thinking that it's vain is not a bad thing. And so many people think that celebrating yourself is just being vain and braggadocious and egotistical.
yeah, I gotta stay humble. I gotta be humble no matter what. It's like, no, you're allowed to enjoy your wins. And, you know, like I said, just that little gesture of being, you know, best of whatever, those moments, or like you talk about Pro Prince being their photographer of the week or whatever, you know, their featured photographer for the week. Like, those are things like when you've been doing this for 10 years, 10 plus years, you're like, you know, you can count on one hand how many times you've been recognized for that moment. And I think that's really cool. Like for me, WPPI this year was a big was a big wake up call in regards to like, there is a lot of appreciation for what I do and the work that I put out so far, because my daughter was with me, and to have people go up to her and say, your dad's, a photographer, he's one of the best photographers I know, et cetera, whatever compliment they were saying, that whether they were saying that because they were being nice or they're being genuine, I just thought that was really cool, because my daughter's never seen the back end of everything. She just sees dad packs a bag, goes to work, comes home, he had his picture, he posts on his Instagram. That's all she's ever seen. She's never seen like the work that goes behind it, the hours at a photo shoot, the work that you do with the models and girls that she actually follows that I didn't even know she followed via social media. And then when she's like, wait, that person? I follow her TikTok, or I follow her Instagram. And I'm like, yeah, you want to meet her? And then she's like, oh gosh, this is your daughter. And she's meeting models that she on one hand idolized in a way. And I was like, that was really cool for her to have that experience, and me being able to facilitate that for her as her dad, because of the work that I've done.
Yeah, it's incredible to see kids and what they absorb, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't hide what we do from our kids, because one, there's nothing shameful about it, and the human body is not anything. And anytime that we get I shoot new images of my wife Michelle, and we have artwork printed or whatnot, we bring it home, we always ask the kids, and it's favorite response was, what do you think? And I can't remember if it was my son or my daughter who said it, but you expect them to say, oh, mommy, you look beautiful, or this or that. It's like, no, mommy, you look happy. That
Nice.
Right there shows you the difference in how kids perceive things and the way that they look at art and whatnot. And that is what I want my clients to see, that depth. That's more than, oh my God, yeah, I look hot, or I look this, or I look that. No, I want you to see that deeper meaning in whatever that image is that we created together. And it's through the process of not just being transactional with them, really diving into them in the pre-session preparation for it, and making it an experience, and more than just, yep, you're a dollar sign to me. Because so many people claim that they're in this as far as, oh, empowerment and this and that. And then I hear stories and it's like, no, you're not. You're transactional, and that's it. And that's fine. Own that. But don't claim that you're one thing and be another. One of the coolest things, and again, bringing up kids, like you said, 2 years ago I was teaching in Chicago at ClickCon, and basically I'd been out there for most of the week, and then my wife and kids flew in for the end of it. We're going to spend the next week in Chicago. But they overlapped a little bit at the end of the conference. So it was the first time that like my daughter had been at a conference that I was speaking at. And so they got to come and see a little bit of like, one, like there's daddy's picture blown up big on this like sign there. And like they selfied with that, and we're all impressed. And then when we started doing the retreats, last year, I taught for the first time at the retreat since we've handled it. And my daughter wanted to come in and see me teach. So she sat in the back and watched, and just afterwards she like, Daddy, can we selfie? Like, and all of that. And it was just that moment of pride of knowing that. And my daughter is very artistic. She loves drawing and perler beads and all the things and all of that. And I'm like, that's awesome to see. And her absorbing that and wanting to be exposed to that. So and again, they're who I push myself for ultimately. I'm like, I work as hard as I do because I want to provide a certain life for my kids, my wife, and leave a legacy as to what I've done in this industry. But it's amazing to see that recognition through a child's eyes as to what we do and how they appreciate what it is we do.
Nice. It's all about the family.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, hey man, look, I've taken up so much of your time. You've been so gracious. Is there anything else you want to talk or you want to promote or bring up before we start getting all your socials and everything and start doing our closing?
Ultimately, just if you're curious about AIBP, jump on Facebook, request to be into the AIBP community group. You don't have to be a member to be in that group. To take full advantage of the member benefits, you do have to sign up and whatnot. But there's it's community. Two, there's a ton of free information in there throughout, and it's a great place to ask questions and get good, honest answers. Like right after this podcast, I'm actually jumping on our monthly image critiques where up to 20 images can be submitted from different people. And we're going to go through, myself and another photographer each month, and we critique these images live, broadcast into the group. And one of the best ways to grow as an artist is not only to hear someone else's critique of what you've done, but to watch what they're saying about other people. We grow by hearing and seeing and doing. So the more that we can immerse people into that, the better it is. So even just being in the free community and taking advantage of it early on may drive you to say, oh, I want to become a member, because there's a much richer experience once you've done that. And literally a year's membership is less than $200. We are the best value in education out there. And if you take advantage of one of the benefits, like we have a 20% discount, I think, with the Law Talk. So if you buy one contract with 20% off, you're going to save almost the same amount as your membership. It is one of the no-brainers out there to invest in yourself. And I'm, as you may be able to tell already, highly invested in creating an even better experience by pushing the boudoir genre forward and listening to what our members want and how I can help advocate for them and use my position within the industry. So whether you join, whether you come into the community, or you just reach out to me, I am an open book to answer questions, and I try to help as much as I can. Like I said, I wear many hats, one of which the president and owner of AIBP, studio owner, photographer, educator, both in the conference world and one-on-one mentoring. So I can speak to a lot of different things, whether you've got questions about photography, becoming a speaker, whatever it is. Friend me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, shoot me a message. I am more than happy to talk. And I'm thrilled that Marvin gave me this platform to reach out to his audience and introduce you to me if you might not already be following, or tell you a little bit more about who I am. And this is one of the great things about the photo community is those of us that are really in this and understand the artistry want to support and lift each other up. And I was bummed that we couldn't make this work sooner than now, but timing working out,
it's all good,
getting this to work now is probably the best thing, and let you all know about what we have going on at this point in the year, because it is so near and dear to my heart. So it's perfect timing, and it happened for a reason. And I want to thank you for having me on. And like I said, from the first moments of us first talking years ago to meeting at Shutterfest, everything that you've said as far as me inspiring or this or that means the world to me. And it's not something I've ever taken lightly. And I've always tried to answer or give back or do whatever I can for those within the community. And like I said, it was a no-brainer when you asked me to be on. I love what you're doing and trying to create and lift the community up. So I think it's awesome. And like I said, I've listened to the different guests that you've had on, and it's great to hear the stories of the individuals that are out there that people may have up on this pedestal. And like, most times we're no different than you. We've just been doing it longer. And don't forget that. There's nothing
You're hitting it right on the head. Well, hey, Shawn, man, thank you so much. Seriously, I really appreciate you. Man, dude, your passion for this industry, your passion for boudoir photography is contagious. I've always been a part of the, been in the group for the longest. I never became an official member, but today I will become, when this is all done tonight, I'll do my sign up. I will be an official AIBP member. I'll put myself out there. You've challenged me to put myself out there because, no longer making it a secret that, I'm a really good boudoir photographer that just, I'm a wedding photographer that takes some good boudoir photographers and just say, you know what, I am a boudoir photographer as well.
And that's one of the huge things
for me.
it's tougher for men to come out and actually say that. And the more that you say it, the easier it becomes. And then you get to a point like when you're at networking events and people are like, oh, what do you do? And granted, where I'm exclusively boudoir, it's like, yeah, I'm a photographer. And they're like, oh, what are you shooting? I'm like, boudoir. And there's no fail, always that one person that's like, ew. And I'm like, oh, it's on now. I'm like, I have no problem defending what I do and why I do it. And it's something to be proud of. I'm like,
absolutely.
We are very special individuals that we have chosen a profession that it takes a lot of trust for people, men, women, couples, to come in and get in front of a camera to begin with. But do that in their underwear is even more so of a trust bond that we have built up, and the respect and reputations to be doing this long term. So I applaud you on that as well, being a male in this industry that is doing it the right way.
I appreciate it, man. Well, hey, again, thank you so much for everything. We're gonna plug all of your stuff in the show notes and everything, where everybody can reach you, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. So I got all your stuff. And again, thank you so much for your time. And those of y'all that are out there, just jump on the community, learn more, and challenge yourself, man. Challenge yourself. So thank you again, Shawn.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week's show. Again, thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, and share with others. Leave those reviews and check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until then, see you next week.